Well, as the lady says, it's about damn time.
Comedy.
This week's installment of The Mandalorian felt like a callback for the ages and included the largest assortment of cameos and returns this series has had so far. Some of them worked and answered some curiosities brought about by the time of Season 2's finale, whilst providing a setup for this season's remaining 2 episodes, but some of them did not work, and namely this week, Lizzo and the plot itself. I will say though, they actually found something for her to do, unlike Megan Thee Stallion's appearance in She-Hulk. Anyway, if you wanted to know what CSI looked like if it was taken to space and had the title of Star Wars stamped on its ass, then this was it. This week's episode begins with a surprising tale of love on the run between a Quarren and Mon Cala, which would be bizarre given the two species have been at war for the longest of times, when it's interrupted by a squad of Mandalorians headed up by a returning Axe Wolves.
Sash, you're not gonna believe this crap.
Accompanied by Cosca Reeves and the remnants of what I assume is Bo-Katan's little army that she had when we wrapped up Season 2. Through a wave of exposition longer than the intro scrolls for Star Wars movies, Axe explains that they are essentially guns for hire and are working on behalf of the dignitaries of Plazia 15. Cut to Bo and Din, who venture into said planet to try and recruit Wolves' sect of Mandos to their cause, when they're pulled off course by an on-world tractor beam and are requested by Captain Jack Black and his wife Lizzo for a side quest that will grant Bo and Din the passage to visit Axe.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
Who says that these shows aren't formulaic? It turns out that underneath all the extravagant architecture and exuberant environments, there's a grave problem afoot, where the droids on world are all repurposed from various points over the last 30 years, and it would seem that some of them have started to go haywire and revert to their original designs. The task is as such. If Bo and Din can determine what's causing this, they'll be granted an audience with the Mandalorians that they wish to see.
Why are you the way that you are?
Din and Bo begrudgingly agree and set off through the vast levels of this world, encountering Ugnaughts, droid bars, CIS battle droids, and even Doc Brown. As they wrap up their investigation, they come to the revelation that it's a bunch of nanodroids acting as a corrupt factor inside all the droids on world, that have been administered by Doc Brown himself.
You dick!
Doc explains that he is a devout believer in the cause of Dooku and what he fought for back in the Clone Wars, or at least what he promoted, and is acting under the flag of the Separatists.
Why won't you die?
Bo and Din apprehend him and present him to Lizzo and Jack Black, who give their blessing for Din and Bo to go and visit Wolves, but offer Bo a key to the city and Knight Grogu.
Excuse me.
What?
Anyway, we close on Bo and Din arriving at Wolves' camp, where Bo challenges him for their loyalty in retaking Mandalore. Wolves accepts and is defeated very quickly by Bo, only to be questioned about her status given she doesn't possess the Darksaber. It's here where Din steps in and omits a few details admittedly, but tells the tale of Bo reclaiming the Darksaber from his captor, who defeated him back in episode 2 of the season, and has rightful claim over it.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
So, am I the only one who finds a few logical inconsistencies here, and one specific to Din? The first being of which, I can see the logic that they're trying to implement here, where it focuses on the belief of the Night Owls and that they'll follow the wielder of the Darksaber. But if Din relinquished the saber due to Bo saving him from the mini Grievous, then wouldn't that make Grogu the owner for saving him from the Rancor back in the Book of Boba Fett? I might be reading too much into this, and like I said in the premiere for the season, I wanted some clarification as to how the Darksaber truly changes hands, but does this explanation hold up, or is it merely just an excuse? Or could the fact that Din omitted the specifics of the situation and what his captor actually was play into this? I'm not sure, and I'm happy to have a discussion over this, as I'd love to see everyone else's thoughts about this moment, but for me, it's a little jarring and confusing with everything that we've had established up till now. And one other thing that I do not understand why they did with Din this week is his sudden 180 about droids. Why is Din suddenly resistant to droids again after having come to a healthy respect regarding them and even wanted IG-11's help at the start of the season? Is it simply the idea of a malfunctioning droid that scares this development out of him, or is it the potential of another battle droid taking aim at him that shits him up? I can appreciate the context of his past, and given that it's specifically a B2 battle droid that he encounters and that's what challenged him when he was a child, I can understand a little bit of trauma response, but I figured that they were making progress with his character by at least having him accept R5 and come back willingly for IG-11. However, it would seem that even after returning to Navarro, he still hasn't gone back for the parts for IG, so I assume that that part of the story is just fucking gone.
Good job.
I don't know, there's a lot to take from this week's episode, and some of it was awesome, some of it was frustrating, but oddly a lot of the frustrating elements were from the Mandalorian himself. One thing that was pretty fucking awesome though was seeing the visual disparity of how Din and Bo operate. This was honestly one inclusion I wasn't opposed to seeing, where you can see the logical processing that both of them undertake when confronted with a situation, and getting a grasp of how they prefer to handle matters and actually how much Din reflects Bo from her earlier years and the maturity that she undergoes since then is definitely one of the most fascinating things to come out of this week. When you consider before that Bo was willing to indulge in a good fight and the world was black and white for her, now it would seem she has a deeper appreciation for culture and a patience that many years of war and defeat would have taught her. She appears more humbler and more benign, whereas at least in this moment, Din reverted to his primal instincts and became actively more aggressive in this encounter. Becoming more narrow-sighted too, and Bo understood they had to play a long game with this, especially with Jack Black promising this system to the Mandalorians should they resolve the droid dilemma. I did also enjoy Bo's defense of Din in this situation when confronting Axe, who labels him as a zealot for not being of pure blood or part of a dynasty to Mandalore. It's important to witness a moment like this as it emphasises the development Bo has undergone throughout the series, but it's ironic too as Din could flip that around by accusing Axe of the same for the removal of his helmet on a constant basis. The idea here is that Bo is starting to see the divides between them and how inconsequential it really is, and the problem that's ruled Mandalorians for years now. There is no one way to show your loyalty to Mandalore, only as long as you are devoted to it, and whether it be by birth or otherwise, does it truly matter how you choose to define yourself? Going back to the droids, however, I did appreciate the worldview of a droid in the current era, where they essentially act as an allegory for the human concern right now of becoming obsolete to a more promising inclusion of technological and artificial advancements. The difference here, however, was if the droids continue to become a threat, they would be rendered to sweepers or scrap metal. But from what we're made aware of, and what they are unaware of, is that the humans and other life on this world have become dependent on them to sort the tasks that they otherwise couldn't or don't want to do. There's an unspoken codependency here that makes this whole plot rather humorous and removes any genuine risk when you realise as well that it's all in the works of an elderly gentleman with a grudge. Make of that what you will, I guess. Speaking of which, it was interesting the drawback to Dooku again as well at this point in the series through Hellgate's actions. I don't know if there's a larger significance to Dooku in all of this beyond what we know, but he's been mentioned now in Andor, Bad Batch, and now The Mandalorian, and has had a sizable chunk of development in Tales of the Jedi. But I just find it fascinating we keep coming back to him and his ideologies. In this instance, it makes sense for Hellgate's resistance, given that Dooku considered the Republic corrupt and wanted a better life for humanity. Even if the Age of the New Republic intends to follow through on that feeling, however misguided their approach may be, it makes sense to have an ardent follower here that would oppose the new regime just by its name and try to make a better existence even for himself by putting the droids at detriment. It was awesome too to finally receive an answer to what happened to Axe after season 2 of The Mandalorian, and as it turns out, he just gave up on Bo's crusade for the throne, so that adds some context to help to justify his return here as not just being a forgotten character whose actor just wasn't available that day. And we now know that Sasha Banks didn't just leave WWE for NJPW. Their returns to the show were purely fan service and to fill out numbers, but I have always enjoyed Simon Cassiandas's performance, and to see him act as an opposition to Bo's reign, like Paz was to Din in the Creed, could create some tension to the group heading into the finale that could escalate Bo's ascension among the other Mandalorians who were starting to see her as a viable leader. As for everything else in this, mainly the Jack Black and Lizzo appearances really didn't do much for me other than act as exposition drones to convey the extent of the amnesty program in the galaxy right now and what it could do for members who stick with the reconditioning. We are now 2 episodes away from wrapping up another journey with The Mandalorian, and whilst this season has certainly detracted from him week to week, taking more of an animated approach in its storytelling, we have to remember that this is all one story and is constantly interweaving characters of old and drawing back on events given to us us years ago. Bo may be the focus for the season, but it's central to a narrative that concerns the Mandalorian, and they are doing some groundwork for the Ahsoka series and rumoured New Republic series admittedly, but it's peppered throughout, which for me helps break things up week to week, and allows me to appreciate the moments we have with our helmeted heroes that much more, as it's believed all these stories are converging into one major antagonist in this part of the timeline. That said though, the only criticism that comes to mind now is how unfocused this season has actually been. We're almost done with it and you can really start to see what we've gotten. They're attempting to juggle around a lot of ideas and beats with some fascinating insights and stories, but where's the consistency? I enjoyed the direction of this episode, but I didn't love the plot. Last week I loved the plot, but I didn't love the direction. People say the animated shows are inconsistent. Sadly, I think we're looking at the live action equivalent to that claim, and I fear that this season is becoming too big for its own ambition than the episode and season lengths actually allow. That's all I've got for this week, however, though, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you like this, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to round out the season with me. And until next week, everyone, take care, and may the Force be with you.